Woes is purring. So I will 100% be continuing the series. I need to live in those worlds when I read books. They're just so much fun for me. Nuggy's in the fall mood. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Rochelle. I read a variety of books and I also have a disability. And today what we're gonna go and talk about is all the books that I read for the month of September. Now, as a reminder, please don't compare your reading journey to mine. I tend to do a lot of reading before I go to bed and during some free time, but I also am a gamer as well and I have a full-time job. So everyone's reading journey can definitely look different, and if you happen to pick up a book at least once this year, then that is absolutely amazing because, hey, that's one book that you went and read. So with that being said, let's go over the 7 books that I read in the month of September. So for the month of September, I kind of read a little bit all over the place. I was definitely really excited for all the lovely fall vibes, the changing of the leaves, everything like that. So interestingly enough, when I look at some of my results, I always use Storygraph, and this is not sponsored. I just really love how Storygraph goes and breaks everything down. So it looks like a total of 4 of my books had romance in them. Around 3 had mystery and fantasy, 2 of them were young adult as well as thriller and horror, and 1 was contemporary. I also read kind of a mixture, but most of my books were read via print, and then 29 were digital and 29 were audio. And then looking at the average rating for the 7 books, it was around 3.64 stars. Now, when I go through all the books that I read in the month, I kind of like to go from lowest to highest. I find that that is the best way to go through them and kind of makes things a little bit more fluid, as well as kind of saves the best for last in a way. So let's go with the first book that I really didn't enjoy per se, and that was How to Help a Hungry Werewolf by Charlotte Stein. I found this book, I believe, when I was looking through Book Outlet, and I was kind of on the fence about whether or not I wanted to purchase a copy for myself, so I decided to go and pick it up via Libby, and I'm glad that I did. So I listened to it as an audiobook, and with this story, we kind of follow a young girl who ends up taking over her grandmother's house after her grandmother passes away. So she's kind of going through odds and ends, memories, things like that. And while she's doing so, she ends up being reunited with her arch nemesis. So her arch nemesis actually wasn't always her arch nemesis and used to be her childhood best friend until a horrible incident happened where he made fun of her along with the other school bullies. And it kind of seems like he needs help from her grandma. However, her grandma has passed away, so whatever he needs, she's kind of left going and picking up the pieces. One thing leads to another, and she finds out that he's actually a werewolf and she's a witch. And that piece seems like it would be interesting and kind of adds this whole funny piece to it in a way. It definitely seemed like this book was an enemies to lovers. However, with the whole bullying piece, especially with the main character being fat, it kind of added this piece that I wasn't really a fan of because of the bullying part. I don't know. It's always so difficult for me to enjoy a book that has a bully that suddenly is your love interest in a book. I don't know. I feel like it kind of brings back that whole piece of when we were younger and growing up, and it was, if a boy bullies you, that means he likes you. I don't really like that whole thing. So there was that, but then also with the spicy pieces, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of reminded me a little bit of horny teenagers, and I want to say these characters were at least in their mid to late 20s, so the horny teenager piece was just kind of laughable and felt like this should have been younger characters, if anything. But I mean, it was a quick read. I did rate it 2 stars if I didn't already mention that. So do with that what you will. It wasn't a book that really was my type of thing, but maybe it could be a book that you enjoy. Moving on to the next book, I read A Stranger in the House by Shari Lapena. This was one that I read for my Love It or Lose It video. This was a book that I kind of was back and forth about unhauling because, to be honest, although the author does make decent thrillers, they're books that usually don't sit with me for the longest, so I tend to just kind of forget about them. So basically with the story, we kind of get a piece where this character is running away from something, but we don't necessarily know what, and then things fade to black and it goes to the husband's point of view. And the husband basically opens up the door to cops going and saying, "We think we found your wife, however, we're not quite sure because the person has been in an accident and doesn't really remember much. So we need you to come with us to go and identify her." And the husband also is realizing that his wife is missing, and there's just odd things around the house when he happens to show up. So while we're going and following the story, we go and learn that the wife was in an accident. She was running away from something. However, she was in the same area that a murder happened. And so she's kind of the suspect for this. And so we're bouncing around between different POVs. And usually with Shari Lapena's books, I feel like it's anywhere from 2 to 5 different POVs in a book. And personally, my favorite is usually 2. And usually having more than that is kind of hard for me to go and follow sometimes. This was a pretty quick read, and like a lot of Shari Lapena's books, there usually is kind of a twist at the end. So even when it seems like things are kind of getting resolved, it's not ever that simple. So yeah, this was a decent book, but still wasn't one that I absolutely loved. I tend to rate my books by how much I enjoy them and less so by how well they're written. That can kind of factor in a little bit, but I tend to go with the enjoyment scale a little bit more. And yeah, it was an okay book, so that is why I rated this one 3 stars. Then another love it or lose it book happened to be We Were Liars by Lockhart, and I also did rate this one 3 stars as well. I decided to go and listen to this one through an audiobook just because I didn't really have time towards the end of the month to go and read it, but I wanted to read it before the end of the month because it was one of my Defend the TBR books that I was kind of relying on points to go and get for that month. So with this one, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Revenge in a way, just with that whole close family ties piece and lots of secrets and Richie Rich stuff. I personally didn't really enjoy this book either. I might have loved this more if I would have read it when I was younger versus when I'm almost 30. I'll be 30 in January. So this book really wasn't exactly for me. I just wanted to go and continue reading it just so I could check it off my list, finally know what this book is about. And also I am planning on watching the TV series, which I believe is on Prime, which only has 8 episodes, and not too many people have talked about that. So I'm a little bit curious as to why, because I feel like a lot of people did like this book. But yeah, with this one, we're basically following our main character. She's kind of talking about how all the family dynamics, and it seems like whenever it's summertime, they all go to the island to kind of have this family get together. And a few of her cousins, she has nicknamed this group of the Liars. And there's one person in the group that happens to be a friend of her male cousin, and he usually ends up going and tagging along on these trips. And one thing leads to another, and they kind of discover that they have a crush on each other, but something happens and it seems to be an accident. And so the main character's kind of trying to piece together all these different things because no one in the family is really telling her what happened. And yeah, that's kind of everything that I remember piecing together from this book. It was okay, but like I said, not really one of my favorites, but I'm glad that I finally got the chance to read it and also can go and unhaul it. The next book I read was How Bad Things Can Get by Darcy Coates. I rated this one 4 stars. Darcy Coates is one of my absolute favorite authors. I've been slowly working my way through reading all of her books. I feel like there's such quick horror thriller types of books, so whenever I'm in a reading slump, I can always rely on Darcy Coates to kind of pull me out of it. And with this one, this was one of her newest releases, and I got an ARC for it, but then when I was at Second and Charles, happened to see that this book was out early before the release date, so I had to go and pick it up and decided to read it physically. This book honestly kind of reminded me a little bit of Mr. Beast. I'm not actually someone that watches Mr. Beast, but I do know who that person is. And this kind of felt like a book that would have been like if Mr. Beast was to buy an island and decide to do a game show on it. And I'm not really a fan of books that talk about influencers or have that as a piece in it. It's just something that has never really been my style. So with this book, basically, our main character is going to this island getaway that her boyfriend won tickets for, and a lot of other people that are coming to this island are a bunch of influencers, whether they're fashion, gaming, lifestyle, whatnot, and it's supposed to be this really fun retreat. However, the host of the island, who is this huge well-known online influencer, is basically saying like, yes, there's just going to be an amazing vacation, however there's going to be games and you can earn money. And that sounds great and all, right? Well, unfortunately, it seems like things are a little bit not great, because one thing leads to another and people start disappearing, and they can't quite tell if this was part of the plan for the games that are involved on the island or if it's something else. Also add the piece that our main character was a part of a very famous cult when she was a child, but then went and changed her identity. So she's trying to keep this piece hidden while also not being a fuddy-dud on this island getaway. This book was really interesting, but I feel like I would have preferred to know a little bit more about the culty pieces and not so much with the influencer part of it. So although this was a book written by Darcy Coates, it really wasn't one of my favorites. I honestly wouldn't mind it if there was a prequel for this book and kind of revolved a little bit more on the cults, because that was the part that I really found fascinating. Then the next book that I read was Dating After the End of the World by Jeneva Rose. This one I also rated 4 stars as well. With this one, I was so ecstatic to go and receive an ARC on NetGalley. I absolutely love books that have apocalypses, especially if they have zombies. Huge zombie fan. So when I saw Jeneva Rose was releasing this book, I did whatever I could to try to figure out how to get an ARC. So when I started this book, I will admit I was a little bit nervous because I do tend to be a little particular with my zombies. I really love a more realistic piece, and I don't really like cheesy zombies. So zombies from The Walking Dead, World War Z, as well as different video games like The Last of Us, which is of course now a TV show, things like that. I love that. I love that so much. But when you kind of make them a little bit more laughable and cheesy, it kind of tends to pull me out. So with this one, we basically follow our main character whose father is a doomsday prepper. And her entire childhood, she was spent going and trying to prep their house because her dad was 100% sure that the end of the world was going to happen and they needed to do whatever they could to be prepared. Well, unfortunately, the daughter's like, all right, Dad, this is great and all, but I don't want to do this. And unfortunately, when she goes to school, she also gets bullied for this, especially by one kid who makes it his main mission to make her entire life miserable. Well, when the main character turns 18, she moves away and is no longer connected to her dad. But then, of course, the end of the world happens. So she has to go and make her way back to her dad, hoping that he's still there and nothing has happened. But unfortunately, it looks like her childhood bully is also there as well, and he's also the right-hand man of her dad. This was pretty interesting. I feel like with this book, it kind of revolved a little bit more around the romance pieces and not so much the survival pieces. There were a few things that I was a little bit nitpicky on, which funny enough was not the zombies. I feel like the zombies were well done, and I really did like some pieces that Jeneva added with how the sickness happens and different stages of different things. I won't go too into details just in case if you'd like to be surprised with some of the stuff that she does. But one thing that did kind of frustrate me was the fact that our main character, she trained and did all this doomsday prepping with her dad for years. And then of course she did leave, so I mean some of that stuff she's going to be out of practice for, but when she comes back I feel like some of these things should have been muscle memory and should have come a lot easier towards her. So that was probably a piece that was a little bit of a disappointed with me. I really wanted this strong badass character, and she was there, but just not in the amount that I had hoped. So that is why this book is a 4-star, just because, like I said, there were some nitpicky pieces for me, and the whole enemies to lovers, but the enemy being your childhood bully is just something that I'm not a fan of when it comes to the enemies to lovers trope. Now, this book is going to be a series, and Jeneva did give us a really interesting cliffhanger. So I will 100% be continuing the series because anytime there's a zombie apocalypse book that isn't cheesy, you gotta count me in. I'm gonna continue reading it because I need to live in those worlds when I read books. They're just so much fun for me. There's No Way I Die First. So I listened to this one actually as an audiobook, and this was the very last book that I read for the month of September. This one I wanted to complete just so I could at least get one bingo for the horror bingo board. And honestly, I did really enjoy this book. I feel like I might have been one of the minorities with this book, just because when you look at the reviews, both on Goodreads and Storygraph, a lot of people didn't really enjoy this book, but honestly, I did. I thought it was a great and fun time. If you're looking for a very campy YA Halloween book, this might be a great one for you to go and pick up. The thing that I really, really loved about this book was that at the beginning of each of the chapters, we get a different quote from a really popular horror movie. So for this one, for example, on chapter 14, it says, "Nothing is ever going to be okay again. The Purge, 2013. And then, for example, chapter 10 says, "You know the part in scary movies when somebody does something really stupid and everybody hates them for it? This is it. Jeepers Creepers, 2001. I don't know why, but I really loved this book and just a lot of those horror media pieces that were thrown into this, which I think just saying that this could really work for Sarah, aka Wicked Readings Horror Bingo, because it does have those media pieces in this. But with this book, we are following our main character who is going to go and do a horror movie podcast. And she is a huge fan of horror movies. But the thing that she really focuses on is people of color in horror movies and whether or not they kind of get the short end of the stick. And she really wants to make sure that her podcast goes off with a great bang because she does want to get into a really good college. So she decides to throw this really amazing Halloween horror bash, and she invites a lot of her friends at this rich school who are really popular social media influencers. And I know what you're saying, Rochelle, you didn't like that other book that had influencers, but you liked this one. I know. I think it had to do with the whole theme of this book because this book was basically what kind of helped get me even more excited for Halloween because it's one of my favorite holidays. So like I said, she's inviting all these people. I'm going into different tangents. I'm so sorry. So she invites a whole bunch of different people to her party and she gets all these things set up, including the entertainment. The entertainment she hires is a horror clown. And she's very excited for this person because they're kind of supposed to give these Pennywise vibes. Well, when they show up, she kind of gets these weird feelings from them, but she's like, it's fine, just keep things going. Things don't really go as she had planned, and everyone has to find a way to go and survive until the party is over. If some of your favorite Halloween movies happen to be like Scream or Trick or Treat, I feel like this might be a book that you'd really enjoy. Like I said, I had a great time with it. I loved all the nods to horror movies and everything, as well as the whole Final Girl piece. I just thought this was a great book, and it was a debut for this author, and I thought it was really well done. So like I said, I love this book. I know a lot of other people had mixed reviews on it, but personally, I had a great time with it, and I feel like I want to reread it again probably next Halloween and actually read it physically versus the audiobook. Another thing that I really loved was that at the end of this book, the author left a list of movies. So it says Jump Scares Starter Pack, Top 10 Essential Black Horror Movies. And it has like Get Out as number 1, which Get Out was an amazing horror movie, definitely one of my favorites. But I feel like I want to go and watch all of these movies, especially before Halloween, just to get in the right mood for everything. So yeah, this one was definitely one of my favorites. I'm so glad I read it as the last book for September because it just has me so excited for Halloween. Then the last book that I'm going to talk about is Isle of Ember by Alycia E. Anderson. I got an ARC for this one, and the first book is actually The Enchanted Isles, which I also had an ARC for. I absolutely love this series. I rated the second book 5 stars. I had no idea how this one would ever top The Enchanted Isles for me, but boy, did it. I of course don't want to give too many spoilers or anything like that because this is the second book. I will go and say if you loved movies like The Mummy, Atlantis, Pirates of the Caribbean, then I think that you will really love this series. It just gives a lot of those adventure and fantasy vibes. It was so interesting, and with this series, the author basically goes and takes us through different islands for each of the books, which is so fun. So I'm hoping that there's at least going to be 7 books because I think that's around how many islands there are, and I'm here for every step of the way. I can't wait to go and read the next book after this. We got a great cliffhanger with this one, and just a lot of tear-jerking moments as well as laughter. I felt all the feelings with this. So since I don't want to do any spoilers, I'll go and read the premise of the back of the Enchanted Isles just to go and give you a little bit more information aside from what movies this really gave me nostalgia for. So a cursed kingdom teeters on the brink of destruction, its fate resting on the unsuspecting shoulders of a librarian. Vivian Banner has spent her life surrounded by maps of distant lands she planned never to see, bound to the Library of Metis by family legacy. When her parents go missing at sea, Vivian is thrust on a perilous mission to venture to the first of the legendary Enchanted Isles of Osamiri and retrieve one of the artifacts said to hold the power to save her homeland and solve the mystery of her parents' disappearance. She sets sail with a loyal crew of the Zephyrus to the tropical Isle of Verdance, full of deadly plants and creatures. But the island's dangers aren't the only threat. A ruthless rival crew with a dark agenda thwarts her efforts at every turn. With her family and kingdom on the line, Vivian must unravel the truths about the island and her past before time and her luck runs out. A high seas adventure with ancient magic and sweeping romance. So yeah, that is the first book for this series. Like I said, this one was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely love this series so much, and I'm hoping that I can get my hands on the 3rd book when there is an arc for it, because I'll scream about the series through the rooftops. I just enjoy it so much. Those were the 7 books that I read for the month of September. I really felt like I had a great reading month just because these books just made me so excited to continue reading, wanting to know what happened next. It was a really fun reading month, and I feel like it definitely kicked me in to picking more seasonal type of books in the month of October. I just want a lot of fall leaves vibes or thrilling or Halloween type of themes. I don't know. That's just kind of the mood I'm currently in right now. So I definitely want all the creepiness. But if there was a book that you really enjoyed for the month of September, I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. I'm definitely trying to always expand the different types of books that I read, so hearing the books that you've read always helps expand that. But if you made it to this point in the video and you don't know what to comment, I think maybe go and leave like some flames or fire for the Isle of Ember, just to let me know that you were here and you made it to this point in the video. I appreciate you all so much for watching this video, and if you're interested in going and watching anything else on my channel, I try to post at least once a week, usually on Mondays. Every now and then I post at least 2 videos, so definitely go and leave a like, maybe subscribe so that you can get notified whenever I have a new video on my channel. And as always, I want to remind you all that you're worthy and capable of amazing things. Bye, friends. Nugs. Hi, baby. Thank you. Oh, we got a woes. We got a woes too. Yeah, we got a Cicero. Nugget, is this your best bud? Yeah. Perfect. That is a perfect spot, huh? Yes. So, interestingly enough... Yeah? Thank you.